coming for you. Hear the chains rattle, turn you into a slave, another piece of chattel. Across the seas, stormy waters, show no mercy. She was Satan's daughter, born to steal, bodies to sell. She had her own special place in hell. Matilda's on fire off the Alabama coast. Matilda's on fire. We're still living with her ghost. She took souls on a horrible trip. Her morning song was the crack of a whip. Ones who survived died a long time ago. Most of them buried out at Old Plateau. But the pain and the memory will never go away. Her spirit still lives by the shores of the bay. Matilda's on fire off the Alabama coast. Matilda's on fire. We're still living with her ghost. She was a dirty secret, forgot but not forgiven. But the shame was so great, she could not stay hidden. She's on fire. Her flame no longer lights up at night. Now dreams survive and hope burns bright. People still come.
Thank you, Shamika Copeland, Clotilda. And now I am very happy to introduce Tukufu Zuberi, the sociology professor at the University of Pennsylvania and also professor of African Studies. And we met when he interviewed me for The History Detective over a poster I did in 1968. And we've run into each other a couple of times since then. And I always like talking to you because you are a product of the Breakfast for Children program by the Black Panther Party in Oakland, California, and you ran track at San Jose State. So good morning to you, and tell us how you're doing.
I am doing great. We all are doing great considering the travesty of the moment that we live in. Who would have known we would have politicians who were such a joke that they would cause death to so many people? So many people died from causes of death which could have easily been prevented if we had intelligent politicians in office. And we had people who were not confronting the science in such a negative way. You know, for the track thing, Lee Everett passed recently. You know, he was one of those brothers at the Olympics putting the power sign up, representing the activist athlete that we see coming back a little bit these days.
Big time.
And so, you know, it's a good moment. I'm feeling good to be one of the survivors of this travesty where these people were basically killing so many people and still are. Talking about you got to pay for a vaccine in Africa. Are they insane?
It's true. It's true. And what's going on in India as well.
It's crazy.
It's pretty awful as well.
Yeah.
And Brazil. But most embarrassed, we're pretty embarrassed as US citizens that, you know, we passed a terrible mile marker this week with 600,000 people lost.
And that's not even the true figure.
Well, yeah, that's the other.
More like 900,000.
We don't know. We don't know about the whole rest of the world. But anyway, let's ask you some questions. Michael said that your current project is something called Museums and Monuments.
Yes.
Will you share what that's about?
You know, it's beautiful when you and the world come to a meeting point. So, you know, kind of following my tenure as a history detective on PBS for, you know, like about 12 years or so, I started doing exhibitions and redesign of gallery spaces, you know, and I have one exhibition, which is a traveling exhibition. It's called Black Bodies in Propaganda. It kind of stemmed from my interest in posters that this guy kind of provoked in me, and looking at kind of the symbolism and the significance of this ephemeral object and what it can do, the power it can have. And I circulated that, and that's been shown around the country. But I redesigned the Independent Seaport Museum gallery on African Americans. They didn't have anything on African Americans, and we created a space and a gallery and called it Tides of Freedom. And you know, I did that several years ago. And then I had this one that was traveling around the country. I did the University of Pennsylvania. It was in Seattle. It was in Oklahoma, you know, Tulsa. We've been talking about that a little bit recently. And then more recently, I redesigned Penn's Africa Galleries. But in the process of doing this, all of these exhibits that I have done have really been exhibits speaking back to galleries and speaking back to the idea of a museum, and criticizing the museum as a major perpetrator of white supremacy. They have been these spaces where the national narrative has been hijacked by people purporting a kind of white supremacy in interpreting the past. And the monuments, I mean, we know monuments. I mean, people have put up monuments to insult people. People have put up monuments to insult the indigenous population. They have put up monuments to insult the African-American population. They have put up monuments to insult all of us as human beings, which they do when they do that. And so I have become interested in how museums do this. And so I've gone around the world and I've visited museums and I've filmed in museums and I've interviewed very creative museum curators. And so besides my own practice in putting these galleries together, I've been trying to understand and film this understanding for a documentary that I'm working on museums and monuments. We filmed in Brazil, we filmed in Nigeria, we filmed in Senegal, we filmed in Morocco. We're filming this summer, we filmed in Philadelphia, we're filming in New York tomorrow, we're filming in DC, we're filming in Virginia, Alabama, all of these places, capturing these monuments and museums, which have been built either to kind of help us understand our humanity, but for the most part have been built to divide us and have been built to remind us of how we cannot let some of these old issues die, like slavery was bad. Okay, you can't undo that. Robert E. Lee fought for enslavement. The civil war was about maintaining enslavement. States' rights, my states' rights. The Civil War was about maintaining enslavement. That's what it was about. So I'm trying to take those. Why are people still willing to fight, to kill people over the idea of the Civil War, over the idea of the equality of people, getting beyond this notion of what we need to do in these spaces is decolonize them. We need to deracialize them. We need to humanize them.
Tukufu, you mentioned a whole lot of countries in Africa that you've been to, and you have a book out called How Africa Shapes the World. Yes. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the book, and can you get it in English? I know it's in Portuguese.
Yes, so I published it in English in 2015, And I came on this program, Heartland, something like that, in Chicago. And I talked about the book and the film. I have a film that is also the name of the book, and it's called African Independence: How Africa Shapes the World. And part of the idea of this book is a lot of times people have looked at Africa and they've said, you know, Africa is one of the messed up parts over here. India is one of the messed up parts over here. The US and Western Europe, these are the good parts over here. And so they've kind of divided the world in a way that justifies an explanation of our current situation and justifies our relationship to other places. So can you imagine if the people in Africa charged a reasonable price for their copper and their cobalt and their uranium, how much prices in the Western Europe and the United States would go up? In fact, the interrelationship of Africa to Europe and to the United States makes it possible for us to pay the prices we pay for goods here. It's another venue of oppression. It's a way of denying the interdependence and therefore short-circuiting the development of people in Africa to the benefit of people in Europe and the United States. Continuing today, you just have to peel off the layers that created the current economic system, the current political system, which is around the world. And what are those? That's what I get to in this book. And that is World War II. That is the Cold War. And that is the fight against African independence and reducing African independence to flag independence.
Can you give us a quick one on how you think Africa will shape the world in the future?
Africa is shaping the world now, and it will continue to shape the world in the future. The question is, how will it shape the world? Will Africa, for example, in the 17th and 18th century, Africa shaped the world by building the United States, building Brazil, building Colombia, building Peru. Okay, they had an earthquake a long time ago in Peru. It destroyed everything. The only thing that was standing was a painting by an African from Angola. And he did the painting in the 16th century. So Africa contributed this to the world. It's established the basis for the world to industrialize. You don't have the resources to do that. So Africa shaped that world. It's incorrect to think that Africa was docile and just providing slaves for people to work with. Africa was in fact contributing materially and economically to the world that we're in today. Now, how is Africa doing that today? Africa is doing that today whenever you eat a coca-based product. Africa is doing that today whenever you use any kind of electronic device that needs gold, that needs cobalt, that needs any of these precious ingredients or minerals which are coming out of the African soil. Now, you know, DRC been in war since Mobutu, okay, way back in the 70s. Yet somehow mining in the country continues to come out. The gold continues to flow. The copper continues to flow. The cobalt continues to flow. Africa is making that contribution. Denying Africa's contribution is a way of saying, well, now we're going to come and give you back some money as a loan, or as a grant, or as something which makes you dependent on us. No, you wouldn't have what you have if it wasn't Africa doing what it does.
You know, that's a very interesting point that you bring up there, that capitalism has somehow, you know, managed to get its foothold, and regardless of the other kind of political strife or questioning that is going on by the native populations of those countries in which they're operating, and this is true in the entire Southern Hemisphere, okay? I watched it happening in South America. I know it happens in India, all over. But absolutely, you're right to continue the conversation, which I'm happy is growing, the awareness that, you know, the success of Western, let's use that term, the Western developments from the US to Europe, et cetera, have been based on the third world, quote unquote, the developing countries all along. Yeah. And now what you said at the start of this interview about how poorly we have performed with COVID, it's really kind of turned the tables and had people see, oh, really? We are costing ourselves by not doing the right thing here. And it's really something to see. Yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. I think that what has happened in the world is that, we got caught up in the theories. That is, we got caught up in the theories in abstraction. And we forgot to kind of, roll it back a little bit to what is actually happening to people on the ground. So there has never been a point in which Africa has not been materially contributing to the state of civilization today. There has never been a moment in which Africa has not been contributing materially to the economic material conditions we live in today. I know you may think that these billionaires made their hundreds of billions by the sweat of their brow and the muscles in their arm, but I'm telling you that if you did not have these inequitable relationships existing on the planet, across nations, and within nations, this kind of accumulation of wealth wouldn't even make sense because we would be too busy taking care of humanity. We would see this as insulting that someone says a poor child in India, a poor child in Ghana, a poor child in Brazil has to pay or has to get in a line and suffer for getting a vaccine.
Tukufu, I've been spying on your tweets. I don't have tweet myself, but I found one that you said. Yeah. And it says, we have to rethink what we regard as the foundations of the institutions of power. This is how you understand the nature of power. What do you mean by that? Fill us in on understanding the foundations of the institutions of power.
Yeah, once I did a thing, this is what clicked this to me in my mind, believe it or not. I was researching who built the engine for Lindbergh's plane. I know that don't sound, because Lindbergh's plane, it's Lindbergh, that's the story. But if this person did not build the engine, bop, what are you gonna do? Run it up like Fred Flintstone and fly? No, there is no plane. So you have to imagine right now who made the big billions. They made the big billions on the fear and suffering of humanity, right? Amazon's profits are a consequence of this activity of everyday people. Okay, now you can say everyday people are stupid and they deserve what they did. I just don't take that point of view. Everyday people live. And it's in their living of their lives that we understand what is going on. Now, there's some people who try to understand that, but for one particular purpose, profit. And their idea of profit, right, is to ignore the realities that create the situation we're in so that they elevate the justification for their concentration of wealth. Let me show you this. So part of what you might not know is that the first White House in the United States was in Philadelphia. Yeah. Boy, that just, you're supposed to, no, Tukufu and start, y'all got that. Okay, you got that. But look at that. But look at this. Look at this. Now, who built the house?
It wasn't Italian guys. It wasn't
Irish. It was not guys. Italian guys.
No, it wasn't even from Scotland even.
No, Africa. And who cooked the food?
Uh-huh.
And who put his clothes on him when George Washington put his clothes on him when he left out the house? Right? Who made sure he had ink to write with? I'm saying we will misunderstand and think that those things are frivolous. Anybody could have done them, but anybody didn't just do them. The foundations that these things were occurring on were done by real people. They are deserving of our memory. As much as we need to remember who built Lindbergh's engine, we need to remember who built the foundations of the White House, who built the foundations for the financial industry in this country, who built the foundations for what we are calling freedom and liberty. So for example,
Tukufu, before we go too deep into history, because we've got another guest in the waiting room, I want to bring you back home, because thank you for your inspiration and your verve and the history stuff. But I'm just gonna try and end this with bringing you back to your new hometown or old hometown of Philadelphia, which some of us have been watching the report on your progressive DA there, who just got reelected, I guess, and who's helping change the culture for a really important needed change in Philadelphia for the policing and the criminal justice system. And just in general, how are you enjoying and participating in the life in the city of your home city, Philadelphia?
So Philadelphia keeps itself on the edge of the pencil. As they're writing it, Philadelphia inserts itself in there. So the people here are very concerned about these struggles going on in the world. And the defund the police movement is very powerful here. And the DA could learn, he's learned some, but he can learn even some more. And that this prison industrial complex, which surveils us all and locks many of us up, but tries to keep us all in political check, that this is a moment when the people have said we had enough. I mean, they went in the streets during the pandemic and they said, no, you are not going to diminish the lives of Black people in the midst of this pandemic. We are not going to accept being treated like animals continuously in this country. And the disregard of the human rights of people is becoming a clarion call for the population in America, which wants to make a difference. Philadelphia wants to make a difference, and it needs to get better in this. It needs to do more in this. And so, you know, some of these are reflections of the people's desire to see more reflected here in an election. And we'll see if he keeps going down this direction to do these good things for the people of Philadelphia. We still want more consideration of Mumia's case. We still are concerned that he's behind bars. We are still concerned that the affiliation of this police with the brutality that young African-American men and women are being confronted with needs to stop. So I love me some Philadelphia, but some Philadelphia love me back, baby.
Tukufu Zuberi, professor at U of Pennsylvania in sociology and African studies. Thank you for the wake-up call. Thank you for the rising power of your language.
Energy. Next
time we're going to ask you about your recent travels, because we didn't get to that, but we love hearing from you and we love your energy. And let me be one of the first this week to say happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth. All right, Katie, Michael, hey, love y'all. Take care now.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you this summer, maybe.
All right, yes.
All right.
Blessings. All right. Peace and blessings. You are listening to Live from the Heartland. It's also Heartland at Home, the pandemic version. And we will be right back after hearing from Crosby, Stills and Nash with Sandy Price of the Rogers Park Business Alliance. Stay tuned.
You who are on the road, must have a code that you can live by, and so become yourself, because the past is just a goodbye. Teach your children well, their father's hell did slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams, the one they picked, the one you know by. Don't you ever ask them why, if they told you you would cry. So just look at them and sigh, and know they love you. And you of tender years can't know the fears that your elders grew by, and so please help them with your youth. They seek the truth before they can die. Teach your parents well, their children's hell will slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams, the one they picked, the one you know by. Don't you ever ask them why, if they told you you would cry. So just look at them and sigh.